Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I have been having the worst luck with Zoom for
Have,
yeah, it's people getting like it not showing me that you're there. But I'm so excited for this and I know that you're getting ready for work. So we'll just dig into this because I have
yeah,
so
sounds
many
good. Let me
questions.
switch my preferences so it's going through my earphones. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Here we go. No, MacBook speaker, no, external buds. External. Can you hear me?
Mhm. Can you hear me?
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
But I don't hear you. I don't know what's going on. All right, now let's try it. Can you say it again, something again?
Yes. Can you
There
hear
we
me?
go.
Okay, cool.
Hooray.
I'm like
Does that
one
sound
of
okay?
those followers that feels like I'm like in your living room and we're just having tea.
That's,
So
I have 2 cups of tea here, in fact.
I
Where
have a
up?
cup of matcha.
Oh, nice. Where upstate are you?
I'm in the Finger Lakes.
Oh, beautiful. What a pretty place to be. I'm in Cleveland.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For some reason, I thought you were in Massachusetts. But we moved up here from Athens, Georgia, about 7 years
Oh,
ago.
what made you move up there?
Climate and my husband wanted to be further north. I,
Uh-huh.
I'm originally from Colorado, and then I was a
Oh,
winemaker for many years. And so I
oh,
had made wine on one of the lakes up here.
sure, sure.
And so we knew we loved it. And
Uh-huh.
so we were like, let's just do it again.
Wow.
Let's go
Where's
back.
your husband from?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, wow. You guys have been from everywhere.
Mhm,
I'm gonna take off
mhm.
now that we're all set up. Okay.
So I'm going to be straight up. Like, I'm so attracted to the content you make
Oh, nice.
because I have, one, I have a BFA and I
Oh,
always laugh. Do you know who David Sedaris is?
sure.
Okay. Did you ever read the book Ship Shape or the short story where he's
The one
talking
where he's
about
in North Carolina and he's snorting his art or something. Yeah.
he's in North Carolina. He's like 8 years old and he goes into the grocery store in like Charlotte or somewhere or
Okay.
and one of the women says, well, my home, well, one of my homes, right? Like that Southern thing. And so I'm always like, my degree, well, one of my degrees,
I
because
know.
I was a degree chaser, like
Oh.
nobody's
What
business.
did you do your BFA in?
Fine art with this was back in the day when you could do two majors, double
Yeah.
major. So it
Yeah.
was photography and painting, and then
Mm.
minor in sculpture and jewelry making.
Wow, cool.
Remember back in I'm 57, so back then you
I'm
could double
49.
major.
I'm 49.
48.
48. 48.
Okay, tell me this. What's your background? Because by
Oh,
your for the listeners, I just want you to know that like she has about 300K followers on TikTok, and that's where I found you.
mhm.
And I love when you talk about art, but you explore architecture, you explore political, everything. You're just like all in it. So I want to know, like, what is your
I'm an
background?
art historian. I'm like a very traditional art historian. I know people always ask me that. I worked in museums for 20 years and then I left museums. But when I worked in museums, I did interpretation. So interpretation is a field that I hate the name of it because it sounds like art needs to be interpreted, but it doesn't. But it just the people who work with the public. So if you read if you read labels, if you were looking at an interactive and there was text in the real world, we call that person user experience designers.
Mm-hmm.
So now
Okay.
I was a user experience designer in museums. Now I am in corporate. I work for a startup, but I trained as a straight like art historian and then I went back and did user experience design, but it's my work that probably did it. I taught for a long, long time. And so I taught high school, graduate students, undergraduate students, and our goal was to make exhibitions understandable. And so that's why like and actually, I don't think people realize that people who are in museum education are probably the like have to learn everything, right? Because if you
Right.
have a group, if you somebody walks into the building, and I used to teach when I first started. I was a gallery teacher, and I would teach 3-year-olds, and then people who are 103, literally, and then
Right.
and all of them are coming to that artwork with such different frames of knowledge, and you have to make sense of it. So something that's like a thing that I used to, there was a hallway that had a Maya stela. And so it's an image of a woman, an aristocrat, and somebody would now probably call a little person. And the aristocrat was wearing all this jade, and I'd walk by it with a million people every day because it was the first thing you saw, and everyone had to understand that, but everyone comes to it from a different thing. And so we were next to a huge medical school, and so then the doctors always want to talk about like cranial, they would put like basically deform, we would say deform, but they would say form, right? The heads to make it more beautiful to them, or the kids would want to look at the faces, or and so when you do that kind of work, you have to become very facile. And in fact, I was talking to a friend who said it's so funny that people are always like asking what's your background when obviously you're a museum educator. Like it's a friend of mine who worked in museums, who was a museum educator and then became a director and then became a writer, and she was like, it's so obvious you like,
I figured. I was like, she has to be working in a museum. Like, I didn't know like your education, that really doesn't matter to me. I don't think that really has any barrier on what we do in life. But I was like, she has to have been working in a museum because they have all this knowledge. And let me ask you this, because my audience are all entrepreneurs. I'm a business coach, obviously not a typical one. But so when I look at a lot of my audience wants to grow an audience, right? And I'm always talking to them about organic. When you first started, let me ask you this. How long have you had your TikTok?
So it'll be 2 years in May.
Okay. When you started your TikTok and started doing it, what was your desire? Like, why did you even start it?
Yeah. So I think like so I did for a while, actually. After I worked in museums, I was a consultant. So I have run a business, and I know it's incredibly hard. I only did it for a couple of years, and then I started working for this startup, which I love, which I can mention, Shop Landing AI. I do UX for businesses. And so I talk to businesses all the time about growing their organic following. And then they always look at me and they're like, oh, so should I do what you do? And I'm like, please don't do what I did. So I would say that not because you can't follow my pattern, but I'm really my personal TikTok and social media in general is a really bad pattern to follow. But the way that it happened was my team ran social for a museum, and I really enjoyed it. And I left museum work, but I wanted to keep that part of my life. But I didn't do anything I would ever tell anybody to do. Like all the things I tell people, I didn't do it. And it's just because like I didn't want to do any of the things I do for work. So like if I was telling a business and I tell them week in, week out, like that's my day job, right? So to tell people how to do their digital and how to do their UX is part of my day job. And so I would say to you, if you're trying to grow a business, I always tell people ask me constantly, lots of regularity, always do the same kind of, like, make sure the content is in a silo, always make sure that you content map so you know when you're posting things, so you understand your algorithm, look at your data. I work for a data-driven company, and but I always did that. I mean, they hired me because I already did that. Anybody who's in social media understands the data like backwards and forwards. And so do a lot of that. I think the only thing you should take from me is, and what I say to them to do is, what I would say is start with that, right? Post really regularly, look at the data. But then also the only thing I did that I encourage clients to do is go with intuition. So what I did was, I did all that data, but then I also did what made me kind of happy. Right. So for my own channel, that's what I did for work when I used to do it. So like if it made the person who's the social media manager happy, we kept doing it because it meant it was doing well, and then it got better. Now in my personal one, the things I didn't do, which, like I never did a video that introduced myself. Like I don't have one. I don't have like who I am.
You think that that's important? So here's my thing. So most of my people are healers, they're coaches, hypnotists. And I know that like one of the things they're not doing is talking about their own personal experiences.
No, they should. I really think it's important. The reason I think, and I was, just talking to somebody yesterday who's trying to start their own TikTok, and the reason that I think like So my TikTok within the first week had 10,000 followers. And then it has steadily grown since. And I wouldn't say that, but it's because I know a lot of, because, and I mean, actually, if you see a lot of the content creators who are like pretty big, a lot of them actually come out of social media for work. And it's because we know the tricks. So I didn't
Mm.
have to introduce myself because I knew, I wouldn't say that I'm actually the same person on the screen. First of all, I never wear my glasses on my screen. Like people see me and they're like, "Are you you?" Because I don't usually wear makeup. I only do it sometimes on the screen. But I have been I knew how to do social media for so long. I could kind of immediately create a personality.
I love that.
But most people don't have that ability. Most people don't come out of I came out of social media and PR. That's what I did for a living. That's what I do for a living. And so it became very easy for me. So even if somebody doesn't know what I did, they know what I did. You said it. And it's because I can project that very quickly because it was my profession. And so I would say for somebody who isn't, and most business owners don't come from social media, and it's very uncomfortable for them. And the easiest thing they can do to project who they are is to talk about who they are.
I love it. Here's the thing, because I talk about this all the time. First off, you don't need 300K followers to make a multiple six-figure business.
Oh, absolutely.
That's such a facade. And there are influencers on TikTok with millions not making any money, not monetizing.
No, I don't. The monetization is it's pennies. That's why I'm trying. That's why. So what we decided in our family is that we would use my social media money for our family vacations.
Perfect.
And so that's what we do. That's it, right? I don't make enough to really do it, but we can do a family vacation. And I was saying because the monetization on TikTok has decreased, I'm putting in a lot of energy this month on YouTube.
Yeah. And I noticed you're moving over to YouTube, the long form. And I started doing YouTube for my, this will go on YouTube and I'll see if I can link it and I'll make sure people can see it.
Thank you.
But I've been doing podcasts my podcast for years. And I'm always the number of likes you get, the number of followers you have has nothing to do with monetization.
No,
so getting rid of that.
Right. And one thing that's really nice about YouTube is that it's very clear that's true. When I was looking at somebody and I was like, oh my God, this has 4 million followers. They literally have 4 videos. These people are this is talk about passive income. These people from 5 years ago, of course, 5 years ago is a different monetization scheme, but I think that, for a lot of businesses, they really don't understand social, and they often think of the number. And it's the same with when I say to a business and they're asking me who should I use as an influencer? I always say, don't use me. Don't use me, because one, my brand is very much not about that. So they won't come to me for that. It'll feel really off unless it's something I organically use. I did some about Indian food because I talk about food culture. So that one was fine. But if it's something really off the wall, I can't. But two, the algorithm makes it so that smaller creators with business do better than big creators who don't do business. Because of the way, and I think the other thing is I was doing a video just now for tonight on TikTok, and I'll put it on YouTube too, but about I think inherently we culturally don't understand labor that looks like fun.
Oh my God. I talk about that all the time because I talk about brain set. I'm all about brain science and getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
And I tell most of these people, so I'm in the coaching industry, so I see all of the business coaches are calling themselves air quote business coaches, right? And really they are marketing coaches. And it's so all these coaches put tens and $20,000 towards a marketing coach, which is going to teach them how to make content, not how to monetize it. So they're lacking the back behind the scenes, how to prospect, how to do all that.
And as somebody who is a marketing coach, I mean, that's what when somebody hires a UX designer, in some ways you're a marketing coach, right?
Yeah. And
I have said this to them so many times. I'm I'm just helping you get your brand forward in your content, but I'm not that doesn't translate one-to-one to conversions. You can't. The problem I think that you're talking about also is this idea that we're not taught to think systematically. We're not taught to see these webs of connections. And so, you know, like I'm not going to stop doing TikToks, but partly because I like them and I enjoy it.
Mhm.
I think part of the reason I was like, you know, when I left the museum, I actually just hate the interface of YouTube and Instagram. And so and Facebook, and when I left working professional social media, I was like, I no longer have to look at these ever again. So like I just stopped doing it, and TikTok has a nice interface. I was like, I'll put videos here. So I think that what happens is that, you know, we focus on something like that. So I focus on that infrastructure, right? The interface and the numbers and the interface. But I'm not really thinking, you're not really as a business thinking about the web, you know, like
Mhm.
the connections between these. And like I'm not going to stop TikTok right now because I want to grow my YouTube, right? And I want to keep my voice out there. And so like one of my colleagues was saying, "Oh my God, you hate Instagram. I've noticed you're putting posts over there." And I was like, "I
But you
know."
want to feed them, you have to funnel
Yeah.
them. But
It's a
also
care intending.
the
Absolutely.
the biggest struggle I see with coaches, or I'm going to be honest, entrepreneurs, is that they see their trade
Mhm.
as their business. Like they
Yeah,
think because I can bake a really good pie, I'm going to have a successful bakery.
I
My
know.
husband's a chef. So I'm like, oh, it's like somebody that's like, oh, you should start a restaurant. You should open a restaurant. And why almost 90% of them fail is because it takes a much different skill set. You have to be an entrepreneur.
No,
And
it's
so
true. I was
they,
thinking about this with art too. Like, I think one of the things that's so challenging is that when I looked at, like, I look at students, I had two students who graduated the same year. They were undergrads at Cleveland Institute of Art. I think about them all the time. One of them is now like a super famous artist. Like was in is I'm pretty sure is being was shown in the Biennale in Mexico City. I think they're in the Venice Biennale. They're both
wow.
nice people. I wanted them. I would want them both to succeed, right? But like super famous artist now. Like I was looking at some Instagram feed and I was like, oh my God, like he cut his hair. That was our kid. You know, and then the other one, he didn't win any awards in college. He did not win any awards. I'm not saying his name, it doesn't matter, but great guy, very successful. The person who won all the awards, who was an amazing draftsman, amazing artist, won all the awards, chose a different life and chose a life close to home. Had a brother who was something, I don't remember, but something had to happen. The brother was at home, would be at home for the rest of their lives. So I don't know what exactly, but I don't remember what it exactly. And I remember thinking, oh, I just feel so bad for her, you know, like intellectually, because she didn't follow the rules. She didn't get, and then because I like didn't see her for a couple of years, and then I ran into her a couple of years later, and she's so happy, and she has a house, and she has a job, and she like loves, everything is happiness. And I bring it up because I think one of the things we perceive is that one, talent gives you success, and two, that success looks the same for everybody. And I would say both of these people who graduated the same year are equally successful because
Mhm.
they perceive themselves as successful.
I love that because here's the reality too. Like in the coaching industry, people's social media is full of 10K months and $1 million paychecks. And I'm like, I'm making multiple six figures and I am completely content. I worked in corporate America and managed people for 25 years. I'm like, I don't want to manage a team. I don't want $1 million company because I know what that looks like. I
It's
help people
horrible.
grow that. I manage that. And I don't want that for myself. So it's like, I'm happy. I'm content. I like $350,000 household families at this point. That's a comfortable lifestyle that can change people's lives. Right. And so I'm like, this people see, and business coaches are always pushing that $1 million business. And I'm like, do you really want that?
I mean,
I
in that
never
way,
did.
I
Right.
think, yeah, in that way, I think like my work, it's interesting. What you just said is, are you content? And I think like one thing we like, you know, from the UX side, I work with so many businesses. And I was talking to somebody about how, yesterday I was talking to somebody about how interesting it is because in some ways, like a lot of the things we believed in nonprofit are real in business, in small business, that like not in like the mega corporate, but like in these
Yeah.
small businesses I work with, a lot of them are putting together lives that they're content. You know, I think like there is a point where you like lose the forest for the trees in some businesses, but a lot of these people, they had a dream, they're making it happen. And like some of these dreams are truly bonkers. Like I don't like I like they're doing great things, but like I sort of sometimes I go into a meeting and I was like, you told someone you're gonna do that and they gave you money? And like it's like so like sometimes you're like, you're doing what with what? And then but it's such, it turns out to be such a good idea, and like it changes, you know, it makes people very happy, the products are actually good and everything's good. But if you just like read it on a piece of paper, you'd be like horses are crazy and you're gonna make the best medicine for them. Like, okay, like how do you know horses are crazy? They don't speak English, you know.
Right.
Like it just, it's sort of like they have, but they do these things and then they can find contentment. But what I often find is with some of these businesses and lots of nonprofits and lots of artists, they don't know what contentment looks like. And that's where I think they're reaching out to coaches and they're reaching out to marketing people and UX and art, you know, like, and then we turn in, there have definitely been meetings where I have a very, really wonderful colleague who has, I'm not so good at this. She has a really good poker face. She's very, you know, like she can just listen. I'm in there like, you know,
That would be me.
yeah, she's very good. But sometimes you feel like, are we therapists all of a sudden? You know, and it's because it, you know, and I think that, I mean, like, I think one thing that's good is they're reaching for help, right? Like, I mean, marketing help, I think, is a lot more concrete help than business coaching help, but they're reaching for help. But like, sometimes I think, but where do you want to end up? Because like we always say, like, where do you want to end up?
That's
And
the
they don't
thing.
always know.
This is the biggest part that is missing. This is a foundational strategy that happens before you even like can start making money.
Yes.
You have to have a clear
Yes.
vision of what that endpoint looks like. What do you
Yes.
want your finished business to look like?
That's
And so many
exactly right.
people go into it and wing it.
Even if you change it, like this is where actually, this is the biggest part about my TikTok that I would never say anybody should do. I didn't care where it ended. I just did it because it was fun and I had this thing and it was fun to do it. And so like, and I've just been along for the ride, which is fine because it's a hobby, right? But like for a job, to be content, you have to have some idea of where you're going.
Yeah, I knew. So I have a very successful hypnosis practice. So that's all referrals. So I have people, that's a
I see this
stable.
French hypnotist. I think that's the word in French. I can't remember. I speak, I don't speak French anymore, but I understand French very well. I see him on TikTok every morning. I was like, what is happening that this guy's on my TikTok live seriously every what are they trying to tell me?
And I don't even have to advertise it because I get referrals from therapists and all that, right? So I don't talk about it a lot other than, hey, I have this successful business and then I have this. And but the thing is when I decided to start teaching people how to grow their own business, I had 4 years ago, I had a very clear plan of where I'm going to be 5 years from now. I have been following that plan, but so many people come in and they're like, I don't even know what I want to build. And I'm like, okay, then we need to, that's the first thing we need to iron out. Like, I want to help people. And I'm like, that's a great thing, but that's a coaching desire. That is not a business desire. You can be a coach for other people. Like people hire coaches, people hire consultants, right?
That's right.
So the people really have to
it's so piecemeal when you think that way. I mean, like so now I work at the startup. I had run a consulting firm before, and I had started and run a consulting firm, and then before that I worked in large institutions, but I started programs. Like I started a number of different programs, built all these spaces, you know, did exhibitions, things like that. One of the things I think people don't realize is in all of those instances, we always had a plan. It is not that we stayed to the plan. Like it sounds like you're, you know, sometimes it works. Like sometimes every year.
Well, you have to lay, it's called structured freedom. You have to put your roadmap together. And then as you're building it, you make the adjustments. You look back, you see what's working, what's not working.
Can you imagine we thought it was going to be this way? Like, you have to reflect. You have to be adaptable. It's not like, oh, it's not a textbook. I think I wonder though for a lot of, well, I think that a lot of people's failure is that they can't understand the flexibility of structure.
Structured freedom, man. I talk about it all the time. Like, that's what creates your time freedom. You have the structure, you have your operations in place. And at some point, you want that to become mundane. So you just go in and it's automatic and you do it.
Well, that's for me why I could do the TikToks, because it is like literally people are like, how long are you taking on that? One of my colleagues was asking. I was like, I literally, you watch the video, that's how long it took. Like as many of them as I can do in basically one take, that's the goal. But I literally every morning, maybe now, I mean, it's different because the YouTube is such a different animal. But I used to, I don't know, probably in the morning, the kids would get ready, I'd watch a few TikToks, pick the ones I'm going to duet, decide, I get
and
all
the thing I've noticed you do, and I'm late to the game. I've been looking at TikTok. I haven't been really actively doing anything. 2 days ago, I was like, okay, because I'm putting together a funnel system for my sales calls. And I'm like, I just want to have 360-second coaching. So a pre-work, they sign on and then they watch them.
Yep.
And I send them over to YouTube to watch it. But I was like, I'll just do them on TikTok. And I did them one right after the other and just posted them with my hashtags, nothing special. My viewing doubled.
Yeah.
And they're 60. And I was like, okay, now this feels aligned. So then yesterday I did 3 again, right in a row later in the day.
That's exactly right.
And it took them
That's right.
They doubled it, doubled. Right. So I'm like, okay, now I found 60 seconds is my sweet spot because I can really, and I'm like, okay, and it feels good. And I know what I want to look like. And then I can just bust them out and then post them right in a row.
And you should not think about it. This is what I tell businesses all the time. People stress out about social. And I was like, you know what? It's like, the thing that is really hard for people to understand about social media is it doesn't matter. It's like, It's a horrible thing to say, but it's true, because what it is that it is ephemeral. I know YouTube is much less ephemeral than Instagram or TikTok, but still it is ephemeral. You could I know that nothing dies on the internet, so don't be totally nuts, but how you look, we had a thing when I was working in brand social and I was the face of it. I'd often come out of a meeting, my hair would be crazy or whatever. And the worse I looked, the better the video did.
Girl, I sit in my bed in the morning sometimes and just drinking my tea in my pajamas.
No, it's true. It's true, right?
And on TikTok, you feel that comfort, oh, I'm just going to do it.
I know.
But I also...
YouTube isn't like that.
No, it's not like that at all. But I really want to bring that aspect into my world. I have a big Facebook group and I have a lot of followers on Facebook and I want to bring that into my Facebook. But also what I'm one thing I see these people that grow their audience and everyone's always go work with the algorithms and never share your video from TikTok on your Facebook because it doesn't like the algorithms and all that. And I'm kind of to the point where I'm who fucking cares?
Yeah, I think it depends on your goal again. So I have done both for that particular problem. And I think right now, so I've been taking native videos from TikTok without the bug and then posting them on YouTube. And I've been posting ones with the bug, just depending on what my
Sometimes if it's 60 seconds, I just do it again.
Exactly. I think that the thing that is hard about that is that people are saying to you, here's the rule I heard that has to work. And you are saying, well, maybe it doesn't have to work. And I think that's another big part of your plan. Your plan also has to allow for uncertainty. So I posted, I was saying, so I did a video about I love, from my years in the arts, MFA students. I love MFA shows. I've always loved them. And, always loved to support them. And so I've started on my Instagram posting MFA students. And one of mine just took off. And because I had shared it on YouTube, I had done it in TikTok, shared it on Instagram, shared it on YouTube. And on Instagram, it got 1 million views. And the student said, oh my God, this is crazy. Oh my God, so many comments. And he was reading all the comments. Obviously it's art, right? So he's reading it. And I was like, oh, I never read the comments. I never read the comments. I mean, unless I'm standing there and hold the phone up, I have the checking the notifications, something, I'm not reading them. And then but I said, but it's not my art, right? So it's a different thing. But but I think that what that proves is that like that had 1 million views, right? Like it sometimes will happen. And I think that for somebody who's like, no, the rules are this way, when something breaks the rules, it's like confounding.
And then they're trying to figure out how it works.
Yeah,
And it's like,
exactly. We're trying to
no,
game it.
that's why it doesn't matter.
That's
Like
right.
it matters for
It
him. Now
doesn't
he can
matter.
build his audience, but
Right.
half of the time, if it has 1 million views, how many times is somebody clicking over to his? You know what I mean? Like
I
it's all
totally know.
when it comes to social
I know.
media and
It's a
influencing,
crapshoot. It's like a
it is.
necessary evil. You know, I think that's the other thing though that's hard is that sometimes it's just for fun. You know, I say to
I think it's
brands,
always just for fun. When
yeah,
somebody views, this is what I always tell my
yeah,
students or
yeah.
clients, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And when I saw your TikTok, it's like, this is evidence of that. You could monetize it. It could become a business for you. And I'm not talking about monetizing your as an influencer. I'm talking
No, I know
about
what you mean.
if you wanted to be a
Yeah,
coach or whatever. And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you look at somebody like that, like you, and you go, okay, this person is having fun. I have fun. Like if
yeah.
I did not enjoy business building, or coaching or anything, I wouldn't be doing it, because if you're not having fun at
Oh,
it,
it's
then it's not
true.
even worth it.
It's not worth it. And I do think like one of the things I was saying, you know, a lot of business owners have a hard time having fun in front of the camera. And I mean, I think like it's a little bit of a trick when you come out, when I come out, like I came out, you know, when you come out like doing PR and that kind of stuff, it's like, it's so normalized for me. And so I don't know that I'm always the best to be able to coach them, but what I do say to
I'll
them,
tell you exactly how to coach them right now. It's very
okay, tell
easy.
me.
So confidence comes from competence, meaning that the
Oh
more you
yeah.
do it, the more comfortable you get.
Yes,
And
that I tell them.
right.
I
And
totally agree.
so like perfectionism, it comes
Totally
from
agree.
fear of judgment,
That's right.
right?
That's so what I say to them is sort of what you do, like make 5 videos all at once, post all 5, whichever one does well, do something like that for the next 5, and then just keep posting. And for the
And you
first
just have
week,
to like get past
yeah,
the
that's right.
uncomfort and not give a shit what people think.
No, that and it's hard. For the first week, I encourage people to post 35 videos, 5 times 7. Then the next week, 3 times 7, and for 3 weeks, 3.
Oh, so I should do 5 a day.
Yeah, you should. The reason I encourage people that when I used to have students and we were working, teaching them how to do like short videos, this was when Vine existed.
Oh,
Um,
back then.
but so 7 seconds. What I found was that people only got kind of okay at 3. So 3, 4, and 5 were really good videos.
Okay.
So like you kind of like because you lose yourself. But the other thing you do is that you give that algorithm, you give yourself enough time to be comfortable with the algorithm. Because if you're posting 35 videos, your odds that one does well is pretty high.
Now, do you post them all? Like I've just been
No.
posting them
No, you
one right
shouldn't post
after
them
the
all at
other.
once. No, yeah,
Okay.
you should post them. Well, on YouTube, I time mine like every hour. On TikTok, I'm much more because unless you go into the desktop, you're not like being able to time, time it. But I just leave them in my drafts, and when I think of it, I post one. So,
Okay.
so
But
now I don't have, now that I'm not really spending as much time on TikTok, but I used to have at least 15 drafts sitting there.
okay.
And then you
And
could just
then
post them and
throughout the day
yeah, throughout the
instead of
day,
all at once.
throughout the day. What's hard about TikTok is that you don't have, they've basically gamed the algorithm on purpose so that there's no
Yeah.
timing based thing. But on YouTube, you still have that. And on Instagram, you still have that.
So you're just using the same videos and putting them on. Okay.
I'm doing the only thing that YouTube has that TikTok doesn't is I'm doing horizontal longs now on YouTube
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
so many people had asked me on TikTok for them and they turn out to be the easiest ones for me to produce.
Isn't
So I
that
just,
crazy? So
isn't that
like
crazy?
this will do much better than a short.
Yeah, I mean, some of my shorts have done well.
I haven't
Some
even
of them have
thought
done
about
well.
doing a short over there.
I don't, so I have actually done a couple now that are truly just shorts. They weren't TikToks first. Um, because one thing that TikTok's also doing is if you post more than 3 times a day,
Hmm.
it's dinging you. So that makes it, hard as well. But I think so what I'm trying to do right now, because I'm just trying to figure out what's like So what I would like for my, like you were saying, like, what's your plan? For my plan is that I want to continue to educate. So my goal is not monetization.
Right.
My goal is to continue to educate. And so what I'd like to do is have a more stable, like what I'd like to do is not, because TikTok I don't think is going to go away. I think it's going to change again. So I'd rather just have a more stable, so that every time TikTok does something cuckoo, like they're doing this month with decreasing our pay, um, just have a more stable thing, so that like I have right now I have so many people on TikTok and nobody on YouTube and Instagram. So I'd like to just even out those numbers. And so for that reason, right now I am differentiating the three interfaces to give those people who follow me different things on each of them. So while everything that I put on TikTok I'm archiving on YouTube, I am also making new YouTube ones and new Instagram ones.
What do you think they consider long? Anything more than 10 minutes?
No, so from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, it's like 3 minutes and 43 seconds, as long as it's horizontal.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I could bust those out so fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So for me, and I think this is about like what you're used to. So what I have always tried to do and what I encourage people to do with things like this is decrease the amount of stress and time you put into it to the point where you still keep the quality.
Yeah.
So like don't decrease the quality, but if the quality is like there's no point in putting extra time if the quality is going to be the same. Right? Like, and so what I figured out for me is that I can do, because I've done so many podcasts, I don't really prep for them, and I did so many gallery talks, I can speak extemporaneously for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, me too.
So that was easier for me because I was doing other videos. I was doing those ones that other people do where they have like a script and then they have a artwork and then they talk over it. And I can do that, but it just takes me longer because like I have to write a script.
Then you have to do, well, and I've been doing my podcast and I just started doing YouTube, like posting it to YouTube, but just with my banner because I can't, I'm cosmic. I can't channel what I want to say and flow for that moment to answer those questions or whatever my clients.
Exactly.
And so it just has been a banner, but knowing that, anything over like 4 minutes, I can just bust out like 4 minutes, like,
oh, I know. I mean, that's
4 minute
people need to know. It's like for businesses, it's not hard. I think that the thing that is, but I think the other thing that, for a lot of people that makes social media really, really hard actually is not the production. I mean, like for some people that's hard, right? Like getting on a camera, that feels hard. But the fact that you could do everything you wanted and still not succeed. Like I have two people that am mutuals with on TikTok who do great content, who I would say are traditionally attractive women, which in social media, that's important. It can be important. I don't know, but it often gives you a boon. They do very interesting content. They have credentials. They're not talking in a credentialed way. They're very outgoing and they just cannot get traction. And I think for some businesses, and like I look at it and, like because I'm somebody who's coached people on social media, I don't really have a lot to say for their coach. They do it regularly. They follow all the rules.
Maybe they follow.
That's what I was just going to say. And I was going to say, like, I think that, but that's also their challenge. And I think for a lot of people and businesses, they think, okay, well, if I follow all the rules, I'll succeed. And that's also why social media is challenging, because actually that's not true, but we can't tell. The problem is until you do it, I can't tell you which rule to break.
And here's the thing. So we moved into the age of Aquarius on January 20th, which the age of Aquarius is.
I'm Aquarius.
I am too.
I don't know anything about what it means, but I know I'm January 20th is my birthday. That's how I know.
Shut up. Okay, so this is going to be
I'm an Aquarius dragon something.
Oh no! Oh my God, this is like your year. But when Pluto moved into Aquarius, this is a 20-year cycle. So this is like what they've been singing about, the age of Aquarius. This is it. We are in it. We moved into it January 20th. So for people like you and I that are Aquarius, this is a very powerful time, depending on where Pluto is in your chart and all that kind of stuff. It's really fun. And if you're curious about that, I know an astrologer that will give you a reading. She's amazing. But anyway, the whole energy and how we manifest and how we operate and society in general, like in Chinese astrology, numerology, this would be cycle 9. So it's all about like a change in consciousness. People are, the curtain, you've seen this, is being pulled back. Corruption is being exposed. Capitalism, like we used to talk or communicate from the top down, that's not it anymore. It's all about gathering the people together and creating change from grassroots up.
Yeah.
And also, like Aquarius energy is all about revolution, speaking like your individuality, like setting yourself apart and looking at this from a humanitarian standpoint, like more like I am who I am. I'm going to be who I am. And the more I am that, like who I am with my husband or who I am with my mom or whatever, the more I am with everyone outside of social media, and the more I step into it as who I am and think of it on the people that, not a ripple I'm creating, but a typhoon of transformation I can create simply by being me and on a bigger scale.
Interesting.
And letting go of this whole idea that there's a right way, because there is no right way. That is such a freaking illusion.
There's no right way. There's no right way. I do think, like you said something also about, I think that the one thing that is interesting about social media is you have to be yourself and not yourself. And I think that's very hard for people to understand, that like you have to give a little more of yourself. A lot of people who I see who aren't doing well are not giving enough of themselves.
They're not sharing enough of how they got where they are.
Yeah. Or like their personality, you know, or like anything that makes them feel like you feel connected to them. They're so stiff. But then the opposite is also true. Like, you know, I would say that I'm sort of not telling you like I actually very rarely say what I actually think about the artwork. I very rarely like finish, like I don't tell you my conclusion. I tell you to tell your conclusion. I don't usually say like anything about my job, my life. Like I don't really do any of that stuff, because that's the choice I made. But people would say, "Oh my God, I know her." And I think you have to have that sweet spot too, that I think a lot of people don't understand, that you have to be able to find the true you in your video. They have to be able to see the true you.
You know, I always say this, I tell clients that, or my audience, that business development is more like developing a recipe than following a recipe. So you get the ingredients, you can put it together, and then, but you have to create it the way that it tastes best for your palate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think like a lot of people who are business owners, I think about, we were talking about some business owner and I was saying, oh yeah, they're actually not great at following the rules in a positive way, right? They're like rule breakers. And so they're able to do that in some places, but then social media seems hard because it's not the thing they know how to break the rules in.
Yeah. Because it's so different.
Yeah. It's so different. And I think it's also control, right? Like there is such a lack of control. You throw it out there and then like nothing happens.
But then just to know this, that like I've had clients that have watched me for 3 years, listened to my podcast or been in my Facebook group, and then they just like 3 years later, something lands and they've shifted.
No, that's right. That's right. You never know. And that's the thing that's so hard. Like you never know when opportunity is going to come up. So you have to put yourself out there. I used to say to when people used to work for me, and then also all my students, I used to say the thing that I learned, the thing that I think is the most useful piece of advice somebody once told me. I used to work for some woman who said this: just be game for it. And I think like I always think about that. Be a game girl. Like just try it.
Yeah, the only way to fail is by doing nothing. And I know you have to go soon because you got to get to work. But oh, I forgot what I was going to say. It was going to be something along that line, but it's so.
Be a game girl, I said. Does that bring you back?
I'm like, ooh, it was, but it's like, nah, I can't remember. I'll remember it later and I'll post it somewhere. You can't force your brain to remember something.
No, the only way you can do that, isn't that to take your brain somewhere else and it comes back?
Relax and not force it.
That's probably a metaphor for everything. It's probably a metaphor for social media, frankly. Like I do think when I see people who are doing really badly on social, I see like sometimes I'll see brands on my FYP and I think, oh, you've just been forced to do this video. You know,
No.
like you see them and it's so uncomfortable.
Here's what it was.
Yes.
So most entrepreneurs just are like, oh, I'm going to do a live on Facebook, or I'm going to do a TikTok. This is where your consistency comes in, with like that 5 times a day and then 3 times a day. And I tell them, like, the structure in business building and the consistency means you do these things, these back end operations consistently, because what you're doing right now, you're not going to see the result of until
Yes,
90 days out.
absolutely.
So if
Absolutely.
you're
And you
not
won't
doing
know that you saw
anything,
the results. The worst part for these is you won't know. Like you don't know. I mean, I do think for lives particularly, and I don't love doing lives. I used to do them a lot for a while, because I was trying to train the algorithm and I was trying to understand them for work, actually for clients, because they were saying, should I do live? So I was doing them on my channel. And it's not like my favorite thing to do. I like talking to another person, and because it's like comments, it's just sort of boring to me. But um I think that that's the other thing for live. It's the consistency. You don't know when that thing's going to come out because they might not tell you. But the last thing I'd say is also don't do it for what you're going to get out of it.
yeah.
I think that like one of the things that often happens on social for brands is that they think of it as marketing. And they
Mhm.
need to think of it as awareness building. So when you think of it live as like some of the lives I love are when people are packing boxes. So they feel like they're not wasting time, but then they're chit-chatting. And what that does is humanize the brand.
And they'll
And
go
obviously the
back and they'll talk, or they're
yeah,
like putting on their makeup and they're like
yeah,
packing up
yeah,
for a trip, and it
right.
makes
That's right.
sense.
Yeah, because I think then they don't feel like they're wasting time. And then, like, because why was this such a waste? I didn't even get any sales. But then what they actually will get is so much more publicity. They're going to get much more. And I think it's funny because so many brands will waste so much money on PR,
Hmm.
which is like a waste. PR is like the PR is just I don't even know why they think it's so worth it. It is not worth it.
I used to work for Porter Novelli in San Francisco, which was a PR firm umbrellaed by Omnicom. So like Power Bar, and
Yeah.
I don't even know if this Power Bar is still around. Like, I'm like, I don't even know if they're still around. But we get these huge clients, and I'm like, why do companies waste money on this?
It's so fascinating to me. PR
Big packages, like paying for big packages just to get press releases and shit.
I know it is so bizarre to me. It is so bizarre to me. I used to have work for a guy who like was in the like who was old, like he was just like slightly older, and he was so old school, and he was like, we need to put a press release up for every event and send it to the paper. It was a small town, so the paper was like a one horse town kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like I was like, that doesn't work anymore.
Who
Like that
reads
does
the
not
paper?
work anymore. Like what? I know exactly. Are we really? Okay.
And okay, let me just ask you this before you run. How do you feel about the TikTok ban coming up?
Oh, I know. It's funny, like when I had a big following on Vine, and I remember like I was thinking, trying to remember how, if I mean, I know I felt sad. I vividly remember feeling sad, but like it didn't destroy my life. Because
It
while
won't.
I've worked in social for a long time, so as a result have had personal social for a long time, every change means another change. And I think like we have to think of it that way. That said, I would be stunned if it got banned. I would
I do.
really.
I would too. I know they're sneaking it in this Saturday with the Israel. I talk about that shit all the time. What's going on in Palestine? But
It's wrong. It's wrong.
the only thing that I'm like, the thing that people over on TikTok understand is that this is a fucking political move. And I literally saw a US
Absolutely.
official say, we TikTok has become the primary news source. And I'm like, there's a reason, because
No, that's
APAC owns all the other shit.
no, it is. I mean, that's the thing, right? You said that about the voice has changed. Like I think about Oprah and how many people like came out against Oprah on TikTok. That would have happened if we didn't have that kind of social media. And so, and like Oprah used to do no wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like so for people to come out against Oprah, so it is absolutely a political movement. Now,
Yeah.
I think like I think like one thing that's really interesting is now that I've been on YouTube, the people and the commenters on YouTube are bonkers. They are. It is like Reddit without moderation. It is just unhinged in the commenters of YouTube, particularly in the shorts, unhinged.
You have inspired me today to start really focusing on YouTube and I don't have a big following on TikTok, but I'm going to tell you this, like, I noticed that people do watch my listen to my podcast on YouTube. I'm like, wow, that's weird. 21 people listen to.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, right? Who are these people?
And I'm like, who are they?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think like it's so fascinating. All these random people who hear us. Like it's like, who are these people? I actually would never do that. So I think it's really funny. Like I don't watch shorts. I watch TikToks, but I don't watch shorts. But what I think is interesting is the reason that so YouTube unhinged. I mean, and the commenters on Instagram unhinged, and like Facebook, I think like they're so interesting. They're such different places. Like I think Facebook is old people who are unhinged. I'm getting close to old people, but not quite. And then Instagram is like kind of like upscale unhinged people. YouTube is like if Redditors had no moderators. And so then you have TikTok. And I think TikTok, the thing that is important is that actually the culture of it makes it not quite so unhinged because it has more community, because the interface, we started talking about the interface is so clean and so focused on engagement that there is absolutely no thing that keeps you from commenting. It doesn't like, there's not like, I know that I actually think the comment limits make it so it's not as unhinged, but it's all about fast engagement in the way that all those other things aren't. Even though they have engagement, their interfaces, I mean, obviously I'm talking from UX, but like their UX is not meant to make us all go viral and to make us, it's just meant for different things. And so that's why politicians are after TikTok in a way that they're not. I mean, also because those are American owned and all those other things, but part of the reason is virality can be on a specific content type, which is political. Whereas on the other ones, because of all of that nature of unhinged, basically chaos reigns. And I will say the other one that is like TikTok in that way is Reddit, because they have moderators. So they don't have character count, but they have moderators. So that you can actually get a political statement up there, and you can do it in TikTok, but you cannot do it in those other ones. And that's why TikTok has had so many dings against it.
Yeah. I will be surprised. I mean, even if it does get passed in that bill this week, I would be surprised to see if any action is ever taken or any enforcement. Like, how the fuck are they going to do that? But I love the power that the people have been able to harness on there. Starbucks, Kellogg's, like I am all about the collapse of capitalism, and capitalism in concept when blended with other concepts could be beneficial, but it's not.
What strikes me as so interesting is how much people can take down these big corporations. Like
in a way that we never were able to before.
In the 80s, we would never have thought of that. Like, I know my mother-in-law was one of the boycotters of Dole bananas for what they did in South America. And I remember like the banana, I remember and like the grapes and the grape pickers. And I remember like being like word on the street, but it never took up action, right? Like now it would be crazy.
But also like when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. Yeah. Right? Like I really didn't become internet savvy until probably like maybe 2002 is when I started emailing.
So emails. How like we're right, we're in different generations, right? So like, but we're very close in age. And I think it's so interesting because I have always had a computer. Like I really don't remember time before computers. And my husband's slightly older than me and he can, and it's such a different mindset. Like, so we had like, you could do like NTalk, like we had earlier forms of internet, dial-up, whatever. But like most of my life, I've had some sort of computer in my life.
Well, my dad was one of the first men in computer in the Pentagon when they were big. And then when desktops came out in probably the early 80s.
Mhm.
He brought a computer home and it was in our house back when they played Pong, right? But I didn't understand it. You know, I was in that graduating class where we had electric typewriters.
Yeah,
And
that's
we
my
were like,
husband too.
"Woo," right?
Yeah.
And so when internet did come out, like when emails first, I had a desktop computer with email because we always had it at work,
Yeah.
corporate America, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But really, I remember when the internet, like when we started being able
Yeah.
to communicate outside of our offices.
Yeah.
It's
I
crazy.
think it's, I was always used to say to students or people when I would teach in the galleries and I teach Renaissance and Baroque art, and I was like, you need to understand, like they changed the nature of how your soul was, right? Like if you think of Protestantism, that's like such a like fundamental change to our intellectual being. And they would say, oh, that, like, how would we even understand that? And I would say, because at that time I was teaching, it was like in the early 2000s, and I was like, do some of you remember before the internet? And it depended on the group, right? Because like if you were my age or older, you didn't really. But like these people would be like, oh, or smartphones. I said, do you remember before smartphones? And I was teaching at the dawn of smartphones, and so they were totally like, oh, I was like, this, this thing is fundamentally changed how we think.
I remember growing up in a very small town in Colorado
Uh-huh.
and not knowing what sushi was until they started flash freezing and sending it to Denver. Like the way we eat has changed because we can, like, technology has changed all this.
Right, right, right. I just realized we're gonna have
Get to
to.
work.
Yeah.
Get to work. Send me your links and stuff and I'll include them in here.
Thank
Okay.
you. This was fun.
It was.
Have a
Thanks
great
so much.
day.
I'll be following you.
You needed to have a sign off, or are you gonna do it without me?
I'll just sign
Okay,
off.
thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, bye.
I hope everyone enjoyed that. She had to get to work. This has been a fantastic experience to be with her one-on-one. I want you to go ahead and go follow her on TikTok. Make sure to follow her on YouTube. I'm going to link everything in the description below and some fabulous advice that happened here today. So if you would please go ahead and leave a review for this, whether it's on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Go ahead and leave a review, because by doing so, it increases the algorithms. And because of that, you and I together can transform more lives. So thanks. Like and subscribe for more.